If you're driving along Helg's Brow in northwest England near Lowgill on the winter solstice after dark, you may come across something peculiar. Rusted iron gates with peeling black paint, the sign is said to read, in faded, near illegible font, Blackwater Park, closed. Many unsuspecting motorists would simply drive past the beaten, unremarkable entrance without a second glance. But if you know what you're looking for, with a certain amount of luck, you'll come across it. Accounts of the gate are few and far between, and accounts of it lies behind it are even fewer, and this makes finding the information concerning it near impossible. After careful deliberation, I reluctantly decided to go there myself and get a first-hand experience of this place. When the day came, December 21st, 2004, the weather wasn't ideal. Thick fog, low temperature, and ever so slight rain. The kind that gets you drenched without you even realizing. I drove along the road at a moderate speed around 6:40 p.m., and it wasn't pitch black. There was a dim glow over the horizon, but I thought it qualified as after dark. After around 15 minutes of carefully watching the sides of the road for an opening between the tall trees, my heart jumped. There it is. As described in the stories I've read, it was a set of black iron gates with no distinguishing features to them apart from the sign that read, Blackwater Park, closed. Due to the fog, you couldn't see far past the gates, apart from where there was a small bridge over a murky, still water, the surface disturbed only by light rain. The gates weren't locked. They only took a push to swing open, creaking eerily as I stepped past the opening into the park. I felt a slight chilling breeze that made me shiver momentarily. I walked slowly down the thin dirt trail that made a path between the tall, dead grass. I came to the bridge I could see from outside the gates. It was made from thin planks covered with grayish lichen over dark, stagnant water. I trotted carefully over the bridge, hoping that the wood would not snap under my weight and send me plunging into the cold depths. Fortunately, I made it over the bridge and stepped back onto the dirt path that from then led on to a section of trees. I decided to walk on, my pulse ever so slightly rising. The only sound I could hear was my own footsteps on the dirt path, and every so often, a rustle or crackling sound from within the trees, which would make me involuntarily jolt. After a minute or two of walking through this woodland, I heard the rain increase in intensity. Its hiss against a thick canopy above me grew louder. I felt and heard heavy drops hit the dry earth I was walking on. I put my hood up and walked on. The sound of the rain relieved me. It eased the tension a little as the deathly silence was making me uncomfortable. The darkness had descended completely upon me now, but my eyes have adjusted so I could see the path in front of me, now an ever-narrowing trail through the tall, thin fir trees. I felt a hint of dread in the pit of my stomach, but I dismissed it as irrational. I continued to walk through the trees until I stopped dead in my tracks and squinted hard. There appeared to be a small wooden cabin about 10 to 15 meters in front of me. As I realized this, my eyes widened and the feeling of dread returned, dramatically so, as I felt myself start to breathe heavily and I started to shake slightly. My thoughts immediately rushed to my mind that I could turn back and return home, but in my panic state I had lost sight of the path and I was walking along. The rain and the wind had stopped. The silence had returned. Total silence. I could hear my heartbeat pulsing in my temples. I could hear every intake and expulsion of breath. Disregarding my terror, I forced myself to walk further towards the cabin. I noticed there was a window on one of the side of its crooked construction. I crept over it and looked through the dirty pane of glass. A snapping noise behind me made me jump out of my skin, but I realized it was my doing. I had stepped on a brittle object that I couldn't make out in the darkness. I continued to look into the cabin and saw no movement. Trying my hardest not to succumb to terror, I stepped carefully over to unlock the door and twisted its metal handle, and it creaked open, with what seemed like a deafening volume compared with the silence of the forest and the dark. I carefully put my foot through the threshold and onto the wooden floor of the cabin. Try not to make any sound. I slowly moved the rest of my twitching frame through the doorway. I felt my way around the walls, slowly. One half of the room was bare as far as I could feel, and so I began to blindly scan the other half with my cold hands. I felt my fingers brush against something wooden and something upright. Even though it was likely something perfectly normal, it still further terrified me. As I explored this object further with my hands, I soon found out to be a bed of some kind, as you expect in a solitary cabin like this. I shuffled around, checking the single bed for some kind of a presence. There was none. I sat on the bed, soon realizing how exhausted I was. After a minute or two of sitting there motionless, just breathing, I considered simply going to sleep in this lonely cabin. After all, the bed was surprisingly dry and comfortable for somewhere as dilapidated and isolated as this. My thoughts got the better of me, and I slowly brought my legs up onto the mattress, feeling my weight disperse and pressure on my ankles refrain. As I got more comfortable lying on my back, my eyes adjusted to the inky blackness. I looked at the end of the bed. I saw a pale, bony figure hunched in the corner.